3, 2, 1.
Okay, great. So is everybody online, Eileen?
People are joining now, so we can start.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Senzeni Ndebele, and this evening we are going to be chatting to Sue Nyathi about her latest book, A Family Affair. So I'm a passionate and avid reader and a book lover, and also a friend of Sue. And I'm also a fan of African literature, and I think that we should really be promoting as many African writers as we can. So just a brief introduction to who Sue is. Some of you may already know her because she already has 2 books out, which is The Gold Diggers and The Polygamist. Sue has been writing since she was in secondary school, and Family Affair is her 3rd novel. She's from Bulawayo, and she has worked in finance for some years, but is now focusing on her true love, which is writing. So just a reminder that we won't be able to hear you. So Sue and I won't be able to hear you, but you'll be able to interact by using the chat and the question and answer function. So we'll have a 20 to 25-minute discussion about the books, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So good evening and welcome, Sue. It's great to have you.
Good evening, Senzeni. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, so congratulations on your 3rd novel, which I have thoroughly enjoyed reading.
Thank you.
And also congratulations on a 2nd print run within less than a month.
Yes, thank you. That was wonderful. That's thanks to the readers. Thank you to the readers.
That was really, really absolutely great. And I think that it's such a great achievement. So for those of you that want to know where A Family Affair is available, here in South Africa, it's available at Exclusive Books or Bargain Books. You'll also be able to find it at Love Books in Melville in Joburg, and at the Book Lounge in Cape Town, or Take a Lot or Loot. And you can also get an ebook on Amazon Kindle, on Snapliffy, or on Kobo. And Sue, I hope that you'll be able to give details to those who are outside of Johannesburg where they can get a copy. So perhaps for the people in Zim who may want to get a copy of the book. Okay. So to start off, Sue, so this is the cover of the book, and I decided to dress up in this to follow the theme of the book. It's a very beautiful cover, and it's a very apt cover. So did you have any influence in terms of the design? Who designed it? Did you brief the designer? And so what was the decision process in coming up with the design of the cover?
So the cover design was done by a talented lady called Ayanda Pasha. So she gets given a brief of what the story is about. I mean, when I spoke to Andrea, the publisher, I was like, I'd like to see a tree on the cover because, you know, a family is represented by a tree, the different branches of a family, and, you know, the roots symbolize where we come from. So for me, it was important that we have a family tree. And so I undertook the brief, and I think she read a bit of the book, and then she came up with this interpretation of the cover, which represents, you know, maybe a torn photograph, literally torn into 4 pieces, and then pieced together with Band-Aid And Band-Aid is symbolic in the sense that most of our family relations are not, we don't mend the brokenness to the roots, but rather it's superficial. And so, yeah, so that, and in the essence, that captures what the book is about, you know, the torn relationships. Though they still held together, we don't heal the pain from the roots. It's just the superficial healing.
So I didn't actually think about the Band-Aid that is on the cover. And now that you say it, it actually makes a lot of sense, because I kept asking myself, what is this that's stuck in the middle? Because I think the first time that I bought the book, I actually tried to peel it off, and then I realized that it's actually part of the design. So that's quite interesting to hear the story behind that, and how everybody sees that. So A Family Fair, Sue, has many themes in it. You know, there's sibling rivalry. And I'll say this, and I won't say much so I don't give away the story, is when Xoliswa takes over the family business, you know, when she comes back from overseas, her sister is not really happy. There's a bit of lust. There's a theme of love, of power, religion, the church, the gossip from the aunts. I mean, Odaba or Obabagazi or Auntie, whatever we call them in our culture, are always really talking about either umakoti, the woman that's married to their father. They talk about the daughters. And as I read the book, I realized that each chapter actually focuses on a theme. And I wanted to know, was this deliberate? Because, you know, some of the themes that you have there as chapters, it's growing pains, marriage is an achievement, lost and found, damaged goods. So was this deliberate from your part in terms of theming each chapter?
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting way to present the novel, as opposed to having the, you know, the conventional chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, for me, it was just a different way, you know, picking up on the Band-Aid. So it was just a nicer way of, you know, presenting it. And you're right, it's the themes of the, you know, that, you know, permeate that chapter and just the book overall. And I think they make for interesting talking points as well. So yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. Because in a family, you always get the one child that's lost and can get found at some stage. You can have, especially with daughters, and if a daughter gets pregnant before she gets married, you know, they're being charged damages. You know, one can call them damaged goods. You have growing pains. You know, marriage is an achievement. I think that as people, there is a lot of talk in African culture when you're about 30, 35 and you're still not married. You know, everybody is asking you. I mean, I get it in the family. Oh, are you gay? What has happened? Oh, umkhwenyana. Siyombona nini umkhwenyana? Oh, you've come to another wedding. You've come alone. And, you know, so I found the themes for each chapter to be very impactful, also in unpacking the story, which is really, really great. So in one of our chats, you spoke about that you wrote a family affair a while back in your 20s, and you're now in your 40s, and then you revisited it. What made you go back and revisit the plot, number one? And then number two, how different is the current family affair from what you wrote in your 20s?
Okay, so I think to start with your first question, why did I revisit it? I think because my motivation for writing it, it appeared that those same things that compelled me to write it then hadn't changed. You know, for example, the pressure to get married. I felt that a lot in my 20s, when I was in my 20s, and the expectation that, you know, you need to get married. And then in my 40s, looking back, I was watching my younger sister and all her friends, and they're 25. Well, they in the early 20, well, mid-20s, and they were all getting married, and they still had the same pressure, which I found very interesting, because my sister's like 15 years younger than me. And what that said to me is things really hadn't changed. And this is not to say like my sister doesn't have, choices. I mean, all her friends, they're all educated. My sister's an actuary. Her friends are doctors. So they are professionals, but still the expectation of marriage still exists. And it's something they all aspired to have. And so I found that very interesting looking back and thinking, it's, nothing's really changed actually, even after all these years. So that's what, made me want to, revisit that whole story again. In terms of the changes in the book from its original form, nothing really changed apart, I would say, because the sisters, I always had the three sisters. So I maintained that, but their names changed. Those weren't the original names. And that was largely because, there were books that I read two books, and they had the name Tandi, because that's what Xoliswa's name was originally. And I was like, there's so many Tandis now in so many books. And I thought, okay, let me change the names completely. So their names changed, but the characters were very much the same. And the plot lines changed as well. Because initially in the first book, Xoliswa was married, but I flipped that around, and had Zandile married. So there were things that I did change around, just to suit the narrative that, the narrative also has changed as well. I'm writing as a 40-year-old and not a 20-year-old anymore. So the perspective has also changed. And I guess the writing has also changed. I mean, it's actually interesting to see what I was writing then and how it's changed over the years. And yeah, I mean, I tried to get it published in my 30s at some point, with paperback publishing. And they actually had me, suggested I write the story with just one character, Uyandisa. So it was actually it was a whole book with Uyandisa on her own. But when I revisited it, I didn't want to do Yandisa on her own. I thought it was nice having the dynamics between the siblings and how it plays off, the three sisters play off each other. And how odd would it be anyway to have a Black family with one daughter, It just wouldn't make sense.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of the girls' names, I thought that it was the influence from their mom being Xhosa, because their names are typically Xhosa, Uyandisa, Uxoliswa, and Zandi. So I thought that their names were just really coming from the point that their mother is Xhosa. And I was also a little bit surprised with that, because normally in African culture, fathers have an influence and the father's family have an influence in terms of the names that the children have. So for me, that was a different perspective, where their mom was Xhosa, their father Ndebele, but their names were all typically Xhosa, which is quite nice, because at some stage, when you start reading the story, you could possibly think you're not in Bulawayo because of their names being so Xhosa. But I thought that was quite interesting. So, and I hope, are your parents online? Because I want to read.
No, I don't think so.
So your 6 scenes are extremely explicit. And I want to read one scene which I quite enjoyed. And I just want you to explain to us the sort of process that you went through when you were writing the sex scenes. So this is when Xoliswa returns back to the British Virgin Islands after her sister's wedding, and then she is with her boyfriend Tulani. She says, the minute they walk through the door of their apartment, he closes it and pushes her against it. Then they're kissing with a searing passion that Xoliswa gasps. With one sweeping motion, he pulls her dress over her head and throws it one side. He tenderly sucks her breasts while pulling down her G-string. Then he's kissing her all over, gently biting her, making her shriek with delight. In between lip-smacking kisses and sensual touches, his shirt and shorts come off with an eagerness that surprises them both. Buttons break, A brass snaps. He takes her on the floor, hard and fast like an incensed warrior. She curls her legs around his buttocks, pulling him into her most intimate embrace, her nails clawing into his back with a need that overwhelms her. He pummels into her with wild abandon, driving into her familiar warmth. Her cries of pleasure fill his ears, igniting his passion even further. She is transported from the room into another realm beyond their heaving bodies, past the reality of the moment, and her body explodes into a magical orgasm which tingles from her head to her toes. Wow, Sue.
You really had to go deep in there.
I had to really go deep, and I'm thinking, wow, okay.
So in that particular sex scene, I mean, it's a homecoming scene. I mean, these two lovers haven't seen each other for ages. And I think, you know, every sex scene has a role to play. And I mean, in that particular one, it's just, you know, the hunger and passion of, you know, lovers being reunited. And I think it just, you know, some of them just add texture to the story, but not all the sex scenes are there just to rock people's boats. I mean, if you read throughout the book, we have a lot of sex. Some of it is non-consensual, because I find that people have problems understanding what consent is. And at one point, you know, and that it can be withdrawn at any time during the act of sex. And so even in the marriages, we have marital rape, and we have sex scenes that demonstrate that, to show, you know, what that looks like. So the sex scenes are different, and they're for different reasons. So, you know, and they show the different types of sex that people have. And I mean, it is a book about family, so there will be procreation as well. So it, you know, it would have been, you know, a bit awkward not, you know, to shy away from that topic, especially when you have a church, and, you know, the discourse around sex from a church perspective, that, you know, all the sex has to happen within marriage. And what this means really is, you find in the book, there's never a discussion about contraceptives. There's a lot of unprotected sex as well. And it's also informed by that religious thing of saying, if you're having sex, it has to be in marriage. So if you're not married, then you're not supposed to be having sex. And it's that puritanical view that reigns, but we all know people are having sex. So it's those kind, that's why we have sex in the book, to actually, you know, have those kind of discussions. And the construct also around virginity, and what does virginity mean? I mean, we see it being given up. We also see it being violently taken. And I think we also need to question virginity as a construct. I mean, is it still relevant, especially in the context of a society where women get raped as young girls?
So sex is one of those unspoken things that we have, you know, within churches, where people are having sex before marriage, but it's never really spoken about, because the church is actually teaching us about no sex before marriage. So, you know, so was it difficult for you to write the sex scenes, or did you have to research and, you know, read other books or watch, you know, sex scenes from movies or anything like that? So how did you get into writing them?
I think I think you research like every other, you know, you know, thing that, you know, I do. So for me, it just entailed reading a lot of sex scenes, seeing, you know, and seeing what you term as a badly written sex scene and what's a good one. And I think then trying to come up with your own that actually captures the emotions of the characters in the book at that point in time, because that's also very important, you know, that the sex scene also flows within in the story, and it is part of the story. It doesn't feel like it's just been planted there. So, you know, that's also an important part of crafting the sex scene.
So do you find that across Africa, and not just within Southern Africa, and perhaps in East or West Africa, that people can relate to the story, you know, within a family setting? Have you had any feedback from any readers who say to you, oh, you know, I live in another country and I can relate to that as an, you know, to the story that you're telling as an African person.
I had feedback from a Nigerian reader, and she was saying that for her, it felt familiar as well, having grown up with sisters. She said she could relate to a lot of the themes as well. So, which was quite interesting.
That's,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I can imagine a lot of South Africans will relate. I mean, Guni culture is similar, you know. So, but it was quite interesting to hear a Nigerian, a West African saying, you know, there were so many similarities, and it resonated with her. And I think, you know, it just goes to show that probably, you know, most families are more alike than we are different. We just, you know, and the more we talk about it, we realize there's so many similarities between us, you know, as people.
No, absolutely. So I want to, so Sue, there's two things. In the next paragraph that I'm going to read, I just want to demonstrate to everybody just the beauty of your writing style, and that, you know, you're so descriptive. And this is what keeps, personally for myself, that is what draws me to your books. And also this scene from Zandile's wedding just reminds me of Abo Babegazi, Abo Dabawo, our aunts, our fathers, sisters, just, you know, on the theme of gossiping, bad mouthing Makoti, bad mouthing the children. And it's always like, so this is Abraham's two sisters talking. And then, so Zandile had wanted her other friend, Kirsten, to be a bridesmaid, but Sis Ndombi had threatened to boycott the wedding if her daughter was not included. Yandisa completes the lineup of bridesmaids. Of all the girls, Yandisa is the only one who resembles her mother. Her complexion is that of creamy cappuccino, just like Pumla's. Her aunts agree that she isn't beautiful, and had it not been for her coloring, she would be very ordinary. She isn't tall and swerve like her sisters, but short and curvaceous in her stature. Her breasts are almost spilling out of her dress, which clings to her wide hips and shapes her ample derriere. Her aunts both agree that Yandisa's buttocks are bordering on being offensive. And she sticks it out deliberately, mumbles Sis Ndombi, not hiding her disapproval. She can see how the men in the congregation are unashamedly ogling her niece. Sis Lungile giggles and shakes her head. Oh, she needs to lose weight, continues Sis Ndombi. She got the worst of her mother, comments Sis Lungile. Pumla looks like a pig, and between her and Abraham, they are both cruising for a heart attack. Oh my goodness. Wow, that's quite like a mouthful. I mean, it's the body shaming, which is something that we get
That's very
now.
prevalent.
That's very prevalent in society now. And it's not body shaming just from a man who wants to be with Yandisa, but it's body shaming from family members.
Yeah.
Was this part of the original script, or did you bring it in now because there is this whole prevalence around body shaming?
I mean, Yandisa's character has always been, you know, plump and voluptuous. I mean, that's always been there. But I just wanted to highlight that because, I mean, in our culture, when someone greets you, the first thing they always comment about is your weight. I mean, the whole concept of body shaming is a new thing. I mean, we didn't have that term a few years ago. Now we do. But now we actually are addressing it. And, you know, I've managed to address it with my own aunt, you know, who I was tired of hearing that from her. And, you know, I've actually addressed it, and, you know, we've put it to rest now. So it's that kind of, you know, discourse that, you know, some of these things we need to address as they happen. And I think now, as you come into your own, you also have the courage to address it. Whereas before you might have just walked away and, you know, silently swallowed, you know, the indictment, but now you stand up for yourself. And I think the current culture also helps us speak out against such things as well. So I think, yeah, it was important to highlight that it is actually wrong. It is wrong. It was still wrong then, but we just didn't have the terms to address it. So yeah.
No, absolutely. So Sue, you're never shy of addressing some social issues and political issues in your books. And I mean, in The Polygamist, you really talk about polygamy, how it affects women and how men practice it. In The Gold Diggers, you speak about xenophobia. And in Family Affair, you speak about religion. So is it deliberate for you to look at these social and political issues? Because I think also in Gold Diggers, you bring in quite a bit of the political issues. In Family Affair, it's really based around religion, but also just a lot of issues around family affairs and how we all deal with each other and how we treat each other as families. Do you deliberately talk about these themes and write about them because you want to teach people, or are your novels just about, I want to write a book that people can just read? Because I find them very, there's a lot of lessons in your books that one takes away with. I mean, from this, I was horrified by the description by the aunts of saying, Abraham and Golis are bordering on being pigs and that sort of thing. Because for me, that's not a very nice thing to say. So are you deliberately going out there, leaving people with lessons, leaving us with a lot of thought? Because after reading Family Affair, just like after reading Gold Diggers and The Polygamist, I had a lot of questions for myself and with other people, and your books began to drive conversations around those issues. Is that what your intention is, for us to learn, have conversation, and we talk about all these things?
Yeah, it's mostly to drive conversation around certain topics. And the family is just one of them. I mean, if you think of the family structure, we all belong to a family, whether you like your family or not. And having been in lockdown for the past few months, you're either stuck with the family you liked or you hated. And and I think, family relationships are very complex. And, people always talking about how toxic their parents were. And so in this book, I just wanted to bring it home to say that, let's talk about it. Let's, unpack some of these issues. And in the realization that, we have in common because of how African parents are like. African parents don't say sorry. And those kind of things. So so although I want to tell a story, I mean, I think my intention is also to entertain, but it's just there's also things that whilst you entertain, you can also educate as well and make people aware of certain issues, and maybe to stimulate conversation, and that's the end result. I don't have like an intention to say, okay, this is what I want to teach. I think people should take whatever they want to take from my books. But I mean, for me, it's just like observing certain phenomena over the years and saying, I'd like us to speak about this. And sometimes fiction is actually the best way, to raise these conversations, because you present them in a format, that's relatable and accessible to people. And because, you're not, whereas if you just take the thing and just, put it in people's faces, there's a greater chance of them rejecting it, but, when you present it in a story form, people consume it and engage with it, and they're more likely to want to talk about it, afterwards. So for me, I think storytelling is actually a good way to have some, these conversations around some of these stuff.
So to everybody online, you can go to the question and answer section and you can write your comments, or you can ask Sue any questions.
As well, like the church.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
Hello?
Sue, Vari Kadzinga says, Sue really goes in with her writing. I love her work, and I think that's a great compliment. But Janet would like to know, where does Sue draw her inspiration for her stories from?
a lot of the inspiration from my stories comes, you know, from the world. It's observing. I mean, I exist in a world. And if, you know, a lot of my stories are rooted in reality. I mean, below I exist, I'm not writing about a fictional place. We have Zimbabwean society, which is steeped, you know, with the church. You'd almost think we are a theocratic state at times. The way people love to impose religion on even, you know, laws. So it's just, you know, how those interact, you know, with the culture as well. The culture, which can be sometimes oppressive to women. So, you know, it's just looking at things happening around me and saying, okay, some things need to change. Some things, maybe why are we holding on to something? So that's where the inspiration comes from. It's just, you know, seeing, living and breathing those kind of themes, you know, and then saying, you know, okay, you know, I'd like to write about this. And that's, yeah, that's where the inspiration comes from.
So Sue, when you were writing The Family Affair, so the writing process, was it difficult? Was it difficult to pick up an old manuscript and say, let me get back into it? Where did you start? So did you pick up the old manuscript and you said, well, I'll go into the middle of the story, or did you read the entire manuscript and then start from scratch and say, I'll look at this, I'll look at that? How did you go about it? And was it difficult to write Family Affair, considering it was a story that you had written before?
Yeah, it was difficult because you sort of have a template that you're working from. And then you're trying to see what worked and what didn't work. What do you need to take out from the original story? And what, you know, don't you need to take out? So there's always that debate you're having with yourself. And sometimes I found that actually sticking to the original story actually worked, as opposed to making more changes. There were times when I was tempted to make changes, and I did make them, and then I thought, no, this isn't actually working. So it's also trying to trust my initial instinct about the story. So that was also quite challenging. So, but there were certain things that I did change in the new manuscript. I mean, the final one. Let me just say the final one. And those were some hard calls I had to take. But, you know, I mean, I think, and also because I'm older and I'm more, I think as a writer, I've also grown. And it was also the thing of letting my characters take over. You know, I think when you start off writing, you tend to be more controlling over the process. So in the end, it was just like letting the story, just letting go and letting it tell itself, and trusting that, you know, it would reach the right conclusion. So yeah, I think it was tougher. It's tougher, I think, writing something that was written before. Yeah, because you just always, you're not sure what to take and what to leave, and it's always that struggle. But now that I've done this, there's another manuscript, an old one I want to revisit, because I'm thinking, okay, I've done it, so I'm gonna, I'm gonna redo another one. I mean, it's there, the story's there, and yeah. So it's actually given me confidence to then go and fish out some of the older manuscripts that, that were written and just left, I guess.
So that's actually music to my ears, because then at least I know that we're going to get another book from you soon.
No, it won't be soon. That one's going to take, it's also quite a chunky one. And I need to do a lot more, because it's more of historical fiction. It starts, way, way back, Rhodesia kind of times. And yeah. So I actually do need to do more research on that one. So it won't be anytime soon, trust me. But it's a book that, that I really want to revive, because the story, even then, I think was a powerful story. So I think it's worth, reviving again.
Okay, great. So I have two questions here. So Tembi Mazibugo says, there are powerful sermons in the book that allude to the principles that most churches preach about, like fornication, adultery, even the verses used in the wedding ceremony sessions by Pastor Abram. Did you reference your own experiences with the church, or was there a level of research done specifically with the Bible verses mentioned?
No, that's my own experience with the church. I mean, I am a churchgoer. I know it might seem a bit odd to some people. And I think my own spiritual journey, I think really began when I was 35, when I was pregnant with my son. And I think you start to see that even in the Gold Diggers, the references to the scripture. And I think it's just, intensified. So I was just drawing on my own, prayer journals and stuff, sermons that I've listened to, and, lessons that I thought were apt to include in the book, and that, formed part of the story. So yeah, that was part of my own sort of spiritual journey too.
So I have another question from Desiree Ann Martin. She says, "Hi, Sue, you already know that I loved the book. I wanted to know how you were able to breathe life into so many rich, textured, diverse female characters. Was it difficult to conjure the sisters up using your fabulous imagination without confusing the hell out of yourself? Or were they based on real women known to you?" That's quite interesting. That's because I think with what Desiree said, I found a lot of Xoliso in myself. And I remember texting you the night I read about her breakup with Tulani, and I said, "Oh, that's the story of my life." And we laughed about it. So, was any of the characters based on real women that you know?
Hi, Desiree, thanks for joining us. Yeah, so the characters, I mean, I gave birth to them, like I said, in my 20s. And I remember when I first started, like those days when I used to write, I would actually go through a magazine and look for pictures of what my characters would look like in real life. And I'd cut them out. And then I'd write their names, birth dates, what they liked, what they didn't like. So they were actually built from scratch. And as that, over the years, as the book has also, I've written it and rewritten it, they've also come into their own. So I mean, I've had these girls with me for years now, and I think it shows as well, because in how they've actually grown and fleshed out. I mean, they're like people in a way, and they've lived with me. And I'd like to, I mean, I think a lot of women can relate to Xoliso, especially the women who didn't marry, their first loves. It's like it's a familiar story, being in a relationship that never went anywhere. And Xoliso's story is also part of my, there's a lot of me in her in a sense. In the same way, there's parts of me that are in Yandisa. I mean, being a single mom and having had a child out of wedlock, there's parts of me in Yandisa's story as well. So, that's why I'm saying they have different elements of me in them as well. I mean, some aspects of my life I could lend to them. So yeah, no, they're not based on real women, but they certainly have borrowed from parts of my own life, and experiences that I've had.
No, Sue, definitely. I think that there are a lot of women who will read the book and will be able to identify with at least one of the female characters. So we have a question from Vanessa Svanda. And Vanessa says, "Hi, Sue, I'm looking to read a family affair. The Gold Diggers left me heartbroken. How do you look after yourself when writing and once you've finished?"
So yeah, it's a tough one, because the Gold Diggers was emotionally taxing. And a lot of people always ask me, will you write a sequel? And I say no, because I really had to be in a dark place when I was writing that book. And I don't want to go back into that dark place. So it's kind of like, you sort of have to live in that world. And yeah, so it also drained me emotionally. So no, you're right. I mean, I think afterwards, after I write a book, I like to breathe, and just, and just focus and in the real world. Because, you become removed, because you're living inside your head 1 minute, and then you outside, you're like living in two worlds. And, you know, having a child as well, you know, I need to be present for him, you know, and I think, you know, I also owe it to myself, you know, just to live a little outside, you know, outside of my head and just enjoy, you know, life. So it's just taking that breather afterwards, you know, and just, yeah, and because of your psyche. Writing is quite taxing as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so Ompile Riley says, do you think you would do a short story book since all three of your books are in long form?
No, I doubt it. I think I don't have the the aptitude, I think. Look, I mean, I wrote, there's the anthology I contributed to, here, you know, and picking and, you know, and weaving stories of identity. I mean, actually surprised myself that I could actually write a short story. I never thought I could. But I think I enjoy the long form. I honestly do. I like, you know, the development and the story and the investment, you know, that you have, and just taking that journey. So for me, I enjoy, you know, the bigger, the, you know, the storytelling. So I really do. So no, probably, yeah, I'm not, you won't get a short story. I can promise you that. I think the shortest you'll probably get, because I have to deliver on the sequel to The Polygamist. I mean, it's been like 8 years, and fans have been bothering me, and I finally, you know, found a way to continue that story. So, I mean, yeah, that won't be as long as a family affair, but yeah, that's it. You know, it'll be a reasonable tale, but yeah, no, I don't see myself doing short stories.
So we're definitely looking forward to the sequel of The Polygamist, considering there is a whole issue of slay queens and all of that happening now. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So Tanis Banda says, hi, Sue. Any chances that the books could end up on the big screen? Is it a path you would be willing to walk down?
Yeah, I mean, we already started that journey with The Polygamist. It was optioned. Was it like 3 years ago, for the big screen? But you know, nothing ever came out of the development. But I mean, it's back also. It's back on the cards again. So I don't know what that will look like. The Gold Diggers was actually optioned for TV. Well, for film, but you know, the producer sees a TV series. So definitely, I think my books do lend themselves to that, you know, film adaptations. Yeah, and I'm very open to it. I mean, it's just, you know, film is another format of telling stories, it's just a different medium. So, and it also gives life to my books. So definitely, I'm open to those kind of, you know, adaptations. I'm very open to it. Yeah.
So Sizwile Sivindi says, Sue, I'm upset about Keith. You made me fall in love with him, and then you pulled the plug from under my feet. Lol, you broke my heart in each and every one of your books. And that is so, so true.
Sizwile, I don't know how you couldn't see that Keith was, you know, bad news. You know, I had so many interesting observations about how people, you know, caught on to Keith. Some were like, I was suspicious the minute he, you know, he didn't have his wallet on that first date. And then the other interesting one was, you know, that first night that first day when they made love, you know, the position they used was suspicious to me. So I think so many people had their own little ways of uncovering Keith. But yeah, we won't dwell too much on Keith, so that, you know, we don't spoil it for you if you haven't read it when you finally meet him. Yeah.
So absolutely.
Sorry about that.
There's a comment here from Buhle Piri, and she says, I love that you're going to write a historical fiction book. Looking at the relationships on all your three books would be great to read a historical fiction set in the years before I was born, which is the 1940s. I really enjoy your writing, Sue, and the themes that you highlight, both educational and entertaining. And I think I did say about this, that you have the most fascinating themes. And I was thinking now about A Family Affair, that actually it could become a great 12-week series, or what do we call them, soapies. Perhaps what would need to happen is to clamp some of the chapters together under one theme and all of that. But I just love the way you set out the themes in each book. And you always, in each chapter, because you always have to sort of think, okay, as you're reading, I wonder what she's going to talk about. You know, marriage is an achievement. Who is getting married? And the lobola parts where it's counting the cows. I like that. And I mean, it's very creative as well, counting the cows, you know.
Yeah.
Let thy kingdom come, you know,
Yeah.
growing pains, the sins of the father, you know, when we get to hear all about Abraham's shenanigans, ghosts of the past. I mean, we're all scared of the ghosts of our past coming out.
Yeah.
Damaged goods, you know, Yandisa's life. I mean, I think that for me, the saddest person, I mean, you broke my heart with Yandisa. I just think, yeah, she just went through so much. And I'm not going to give away what she's been through, because some people probably have not yet read the book. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when you get into that, you kind of think, wow. And then you get a chapter called The Rebirth, and you know, it's the epilogue, and the chapter is called The Rebirth. And you think, okay, what is she going to talk about? You know, the justice system. So it's really very, very creatively written, Sue. The Forgotten Woman. I mean, wow, it's absolutely great.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean,
yeah,
because it's a life cycle. I mean, like a family, they are birth and they are dead, and I think you should think of it that way when you read the whole book. It's a life cycle. You know, beginnings and endings, people being born, people dying, and that's life. And you know, I tried to replicate that, you know, throughout the book. And you know, with life, with all its moments, because I mean, if you think about your life, it's not, you don't remember every single thing that happens to you. You remember certain moments, you know, happy moments, sad moments, and it's those moments that, you know, you sort of capture through the book.
And also sometimes as human beings, I think that we deliberately don't remember some of the parts of our lives because they're not so great.
The traumatic ones.
The traumatic ones. So, you know, if one thinks about Yandisa, one would think that she possibly doesn't want to remember some of the parts of her story. So Thembi Mazibuko says here, has your television writing experience influenced the manuscript in terms of characterization and scene setting? Because you've written for television, so you wrote for Matatiela, and you're also currently writing for Generations, and you've also written for The Legacy, which is really great. So yeah, so any influences there?
No, I think TV writing and, you know, novel writing are two different things. And yeah, so, you know, I mean, with TV action, people need to see. So you can't show that on TV. So they're totally two different mediums. And yeah, so yeah, it's a totally different transition, I think, from the two. And remember, you know, I'm not trained as a writer, so you know, either. So I always find, like, you know, it's, yeah, I'm constantly learning. So no, I wouldn't say, you know, that it's never actually been like that. You know, I think I'm a writer first before, and then I'm the TV writer second, you know. Yeah, so yeah, and that's just, there's a totally different approach, I think, to writing for TV.
So we have a comment from Hloni Dlamini, who says, love all your books, I'm a big fan. Family Affair blew me away. I loved Xoliswa. I saw myself in her. So I guess you're used to all of us saying, I see myself in this one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us in our 40s, would probably see a lot of ourselves in Xoliso, and especially if we didn't get married in our 20s or our 30s, we're likely to see ourselves in a Xoliso because that heartbreak with Tulani does actually happen. Emmanuel Sigauke says, what audiences do you have in mind as you write your novel? Whose faces do you picture smiling as you process the story?
I actually don't think about the audiences I write at all. And I think that whole audience thing is more of a marketing thing. You know, so I remember someone saying to me, oh, this book wasn't written for my gender. And I'm like, geez, which gender was it written for? You know, I'm not, you know, when I write, I'm just thinking of the story that I want to tell. I don't worry about who are we selling this, you know, who are we targeting. I think that's really a marketing function. So I never worry about the audience, you know. I just know that, you know, I obviously have readers who've been following my work, and I just always pray that they like it, whatever it is that I've written. Yeah. So yeah, but I never really delve too much into who the audience is. No, I never do.
And so whose faces do you picture smiling as you process the story? So do you think of someone's aunt that you once met as you were writing about Aunt Lungi or Sis Ndombi in Family Affair? Or did you picture one of your aunts and you don't really have to disclose if it was one of them? Or did you just write?
No, I just write. It's always, because I think once you start trying to think of, okay, reactions, I think it will then mess up your, you know, process. Can you imagine if I was writing love scenes and thinking of my parents? You know, I would definitely have toned it down. So do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, I just, I divorce everything else and I just focus on the creation and creating the story.
So before we wrap up, Sue, so most people are aware that the Polygamist, you self-published, and there was a question here about how did you take a chance and how did you then just decide, I'm going to do it, I'm going to self-publish? Was it a difficult decision? Was it a difficult process? And also, how would you encourage other budding African authors who want to write? You know, what would you want to say to them? Should people explore self-publishing first, or should people go and find a publisher? And how should people go about the writing process? Since you've had an experience of both, of having a first self-publishing and then having a publisher.
Okay, so all my life, I think, I didn't know much about self-publishing. It's something that, I stumbled upon when I was trying to get traditionally published. And I couldn't get a publisher for The Polygamist. No one was interested at the time. So it's not to say that, so you see, that's the thing. So then self-publishing was then given to me as an alternative, because Paula Murray, who edited The Polygamist, was like, it's a really good book, and I think you should put it out there. And so I said, fine, walk me through it. What does self-publishing entail? And so, we went through that journey. And I'll be honest with you, and this is actually quite funny for someone who was an analyst who does industry analysis. I really didn't do a lot of homework to try and understand the publishing industry. And it's a different ball game. And I think a lot of upcoming writers should actually take time to understand really what happens in the publishing industry. Because I promise you, my idea initially when I was getting published, I was like, I did the numbers because I'm an analyst, a spreadsheet girl. I was like, we print 1,000, we sell them, we get returns. Within a month. I thought books flew off the shelf, So, so when I got funding, Victor, said to me, no, I'll give you the capital to fund and we'll go into it together. And I said, sure. And I did my numbers and I said, you know what, if we sell within a month, you'll have your money back. And then, so it was all good. The numbers, worked. But what I didn't realize was books don't move as fast as you think they do. And I was shocked when, bookstores were ordering 5 copies and 10, and I'm thinking, holy, Like, are they taking more? And so for me, it was like learn as you go. And I didn't understand the distribution model and that books are sold at a discount. So for me, it was like really jumping into the deep end and learning as I go. But I think it was a lesson worth learning, because it's an invaluable lesson, because now I understand how the industry works. So yes, I understand a lot of first-time writers are keen to get out there, and it might seem like an easy route, but there's a lot of work as well involved in self-publishing, beyond just putting the book out there, marketing, distributing, which you get care of that aspect. But then you also need to think, it's different strokes for different folks. It depends what your end game is. I think initially my game, I think I'd always wanted to be traditionally published. So I tried it with the second book, and when I got a publisher for that one, I was like, okay, great. And so it carried on like that. So I just think I don't want to be prescriptive. I think do what works for you. But I feel like with most writers who are coming up, just always remember that your first draft is not the final draft. I think that's the pitfall of many self-published writers. Take the time to work through your manuscript, get it edited properly. And editing is just not grammar and checking spelling. There's more to editing than that. And I think people undermine the role of editors in polishing up a manuscript, in terms of the development and that sort of thing. So I think, yeah, people just need to invest more time into their work as well. Yeah.
So Sue, have you been surprised by how well your books have been received? And also in terms of sales, which one has been a bestseller?
I think they all are now, from The Polygamist, up to A Family Affair. But I think that also took time. I mean, a lot of people, to build my name from The Polygamist took a while. But The Polygamist is still selling 8 years later, which goes to show you that it has longevity. Many books don't print, and I think because then people moved on. It's taken a while, but now I think I've also gained a reputation in terms of the work and my writing, so people now buy into me easier. They don't need much convincing anymore. So yeah, so I think so the books now sort of sell themselves in a way.
No, absolutely, Sue. So a message from Sipho Malunga. He says, thanks for this. This is inspiring. Thank you, Sue. Really inspiring, and looking forward to reading your book. Sipho, I can definitely tell you that you will not put it down. It's a page turner. If you have read The Polygamist, and if you have read The Gold Diggers, it's going to be the same process. You won't put it down. And I think one of the things, Sue, that happens with you is that we can never only talk about one book and not talk about the others. So do you find that it happens all the time, that when people are speaking about A Family Affair, The Polygamist, and The Gold Diggers will pop up, and that each one has had a different effect on people? I thoroughly enjoyed The Polygamist. I read it overnight. I think after the launch, I got home and I read a few pages, and the following day I stayed in bed and I read the book the whole day. And it was the same thing with The Gold Diggers. But the Polygamist was fun. The Gold Diggers left me very traumatized.
They're different books. I think
they're very different books. And that's quite amazing how you can have the different emotions with people. And A Family Affair really just takes you back as a reader into your own family life. You begin to look at what your family is like, how we all relate to each other. And it's very, very, very thought-provoking. It's extremely interesting. And one last question. Did you have lots of nostalgic feelings, and when you were writing, about A Family Affair in Bulawayo, a place that you once called home, and you left Bulawayo in about 2008. Didn't you almost like rewind feelings of nostalgia, going back in time, remembering family gatherings, which you do probably sometimes miss now because you're far away from home?
I did. I mean, that book was writing from nostalgia for me. And it was important for me to recapture that Bulawayo in that time, because I don't think we'll ever get it back. So it was also an important book for me to write. Yeah. And yeah, I think on that note, we have to end.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you to everybody who joined us online. We really appreciate your time and also the questions that you've all posed. So you can get a copy of The Polygamist from all bookstores. You can get it from Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, Love Books in Melville, from CNA as well. And let's continue to support our African writers. Thank you very much for joining us, Sue. Thank you.
And thank you to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.